Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And as always, we'll start with a little bit of news where CCP gave us an update on a next patch that they're planning to do with a couple of improvements. And the one that I really like, that's very good news I think, is that we'll have the ability to have multiple jump clones in a single station with, I think it's like cloning facilities or something like that. Very good news that should now allow you to basically have in your main base of operations a clone for mining, a clone for your missions, a clone for PvP. You can have them all in the same station. This is a problem that we have encountered in our base of operations in Iona, where we wanted to do some PvP, and so we couldn't put a PvP clone in the same station where we did everything else from, and so we had to move part of our stuff to another station. It's a little bit of annoying, it's a bit of a hassle, and in fact I think I lost a couple of implant sets due to well, the limitation that is now being removed. So I'd say that's pretty good news. Then there's some other tweaks that are happening to some of the like AoE jammers and also some quality of life improvements for wormhole rolling. So overall I think welcome news for the player base stuff that they like to see, they've been asking for a long time. So it looks like CCP is continuing their efforts on that front as well. Real life, you may already have seen that yourself as well. Looks like they have a volcanic eruption in Iceland, not too far from Reykjavik, from the capital city there, but from what I've read so far, doesn't look like it's like too big or there's any real danger to people or anything like that. But perhaps some people have decided to dump some of their plex because of the potential bad news that a volcanic eruption could mean there. You may already have seen from the ticker, we are continuing to go down when it comes to the price of a plex. Before we get going, as always, we'll take a quick look at the new Eden store to see what's happening there. I think they had a special running for St. Patrick's Day. They have the Vexor Navy issue Federal Police skin. These police skins do look pretty damn good. 110 plex, right? Decently expensive, but for the quality of the skin, I actually think it's worth it. Then we get a couple of bundles and yeah, some more police skins showing up as new if you want it on your Thanatos. It's 390 plex. God damn it, I actually have a Thanatos out there and I gotta say that does look, Jesus, that looks good. It's going to be something to look into for sure. Quick look at the services. We do have a special happening here. You get 30-day Omega for 500 plex. And a free Nergal skin. So here, instead of 610 for a package, it's now just 500 plex for 30 days game time and then a free skin. I think it's because of St. Patrick's Day or something like that. It's a green one and that's why they chose that, and that's just a package deal for the extractors. So that is it for the new Eden store. Let's move on to the market itself. We will start with some plex and stuff, and that's, spoilers, that's what I'm planning to do as the extra product here, but let's go 325 plex and stuff like that, and here we go. Plex itself, well, someone just came in with 3000 plex in GTA itself for 2.3 million. Let's take a quick look at the chart and you can see the continued pressure. We're going down to yet another 1 year low point, and yeah, we've broken through that 2.3 million barrier without too much resistance. A bit of surprise here for me personally. You can see here at like 2.5 you get a bit of hesitation, at 2.4 you get a bit of hesitation. In fact, we went up for a week, it looked like, all right, maybe we're forming a bottom or something like that, but no, one leg and then a slowdown in the decline, but we're just basically going straight down to lower prices yet again. Could be again more impact from everything in general. It looks like players are feeling deflation to be the reality in the game at the moment. I think main culprit for most players is going to be the changes to Gnostic ratting, where, well, you've got that extra risk now with the bank that becomes a juicy target for PvPers. And overall, this does mean that the price of 500 plex for 30 days game time is now down to less than 1.2 billion ISK, and that's for these sellers. So you can really get a better deal than that with a bit of patience as well. 1.178 million is actually the current price calculated for the straight purchase from Jita itself, which I would say for affordability and for getting a feeling, I may not have to do a massive grind every single month in order to earn my 30 days game time. It does come into view as being a little bit more reasonable. And so I would say perhaps another factor could be as well the impact all the changes have done and the efforts that CCP has done against botting, because really when it comes to inflation and crazy prices for 30 days game time, of course botting accounts tend to be a real moving factor on that. So 2.3 million, a bit above that for the sellers in Jita, less than 2.2 million for the buyers in the player-owned trade. In Jita itself. And then for the player-owned trade hubs, look at that, just breaking through 2.3 million. We're below that already for the first few sellers in perimeter, and the buyers, they hardly go up. It's well below 2.2 for the buyers. So more pressure on plex, more deflationary pressure in the, what I'm gonna say, general feeling of general economy here, because of course plex tends to be that in my opinion gold for EVE Online, for its economy. And so we're seeing that link with the real life world seems to be in deflation. Interesting. Next up, multiple pilot train certificate following suit, of course, and now already below 1.2 billion for the average price. Even the sellers, 1.18 billion for the sellers, which is pretty much what we calculated for 30 days game time, and less than 1.1 billion for the buyers. So again, the pressure clearly showing up here. Skill extractors should follow suit. Yeah, these are continuing to decline as well. And in fact, today's data point is below 260 million on increased volume. Some more dumping happening, I think. 257 million indeed for the sellers. Look at that last 24 hours. That's still 24 hours. That's in fact just a couple of hours right here. Last 24 hours starts here from 268 down to 257 at this point. 245 million for the buyers. So that again is showing that pressure is on. And yeah, less than 250 is coming into view. Another pronounced 1-year low point here. For the skill injectors, then we've got the large skill injectors that are of course feeling the pressure as well. A bit more hesitation in this chart. Again, a couple of bounces off of 630, but here at the end you can clearly see that that's not defended anymore. We are going below that. 619 million for the sellers and 595 for the buyers. And yeah, all right, so it is starting to be springtime here in Belgium. Quick anecdote is that there's a couple of pigeons that seem to have decided to use my front yard as a place to make a lot of noise. So if it comes through from time to time, I got this co-host now. He actually woke me up this morning as well. So I get a pigeon that's potentially making some noise. But let's keep going. So the large skill injectors feeling the pressure as well. Currently selling for 618.5 million, so well below 620 already at this point. And look at these buyers below 600 million at 595. The pressure is real, and it looks to me a little bit like buyers are staying away from these products at the moment, because they are opening up some pretty serious margins here and definitely breaking through those barriers pretty easily. So next up, the small skill injectors. Let's take a look at that one. Also pressure, 1-year low point, not bit more wavy pattern here, but definitely trending down at the moment. And yeah, the chart is still showing us above 130, but look at these sellers. That's going quite aggressive. And in the last, well, not in the last 24 hours. So I'm a bit surprised by this chart. You'd think we'd have broken through 130 at this point already, with sellers coming in at 125, 127. There's definitely enough of them below 130, and then buyers are now already below 120 million ISK as well. So quite a bit of pressure in general in the plex and skill injector market. I don't expect good news then for, all right, surprise pullback then. Our exception still is holding true. Here is the daily alpha injector chart actually going back up, managing to get back above 40 million. And that's pretty impressive considering everything else. 41 for the sellers, 37 million for the buyers. Alpha clone interest in these daily alpha injectors seem to be growing again. And it's basically on this chart, I would say, back to a slightly above average price, which is definitely a counter to all of that 1-year low point activity that we have for pretty much everything else. Then we've got the hypercores that are also going down on that deflationary pressure. 1 year low point as well, below 250k now, 240 for the sellers, 236 for the buyers. This one perhaps wants to form a little bit of a bottom. These two are reaching each other, but I would not be surprised that the pressure continues for now. Perhaps what could become the turnaround point. And honestly, you know, I've been doing this for a couple of years. It's not clockwork, so it's not like every single year the same pattern happens. But one thing that I have seen is that the anniversary and, you know, FanFest, which probably they'll do some online stuff this year again as well, you know, is where CCP comes out with like a trailer, cool stuff, builds a little bit of hype, perhaps even allows us to do some stuff with Plex that we couldn't before for like a limited amount of time. That tends to, you know, drive a little bit of demand, and then all of a sudden we are finding ourselves on that upswing towards the summer. Now, it doesn't happen every year, but I have seen it happen before, so that's going to be the pattern that I'm personally going to be looking at this point, and perhaps I'll make some more investments. I do, for instance, have some way too early purchases for a large and a couple of small scale injectors, so perhaps I'll double down on those, get a couple of cheaper ones to lower my average price, and then try to make a profit on hopefully that wave up after FanFest. But let's be honest as well. The economic reality in the sandbox at the moment is that making ISK is difficult, making stuff is difficult. That definitely feels quite deflationary in general, and so this trend may not be over just yet. So let's keep both sides in mind. Next up, the mineral market coming in at 1140. Like that, and we'll as always start with titanium. That's sort of hesitating. You can see we're staying below 6 ISK, but we're not declining that much more at the tail end of the chart, and sellers are coming in JITA at 598 now, 597 just a moment ago. The one thing that we're seeing is still 200 million, 100 million, so we get plenty of supplies to actually maintain, I think, that average 6 ISK price range at the moment. Buyers are coming in with similar amounts at 580, pretty narrow margin, but yeah, the great times when we had 7, 8, 9, 10 ISK, those unfortunately are over. This is just, I would say, the regular price for titanium. If you sell, that's definitely okay. If you decide to hold on for a better price, that is an understandable reaction here for 6 ISK as well. Anything above that tends to be, for me, like, all right, definitely sell territory. A little bit below that, like now, it's hesitation. And once you head towards like 5.5 towards 5 ISK, that's where I personally tend to hold off on selling what I'm producing at the moment. For pyrite, we basically have a flat chart just below 20 as well here. 18.18 now for the sellers. Bit of pressure I'm seeing here, I think, compared to last week. 18.17 for the buyers. Super narrow margin. 100 million here, 100 million here. We definitely have volumes here coming online as well. I think the general trend that we should be seeing here is that those high-SIC bases of operations and those influence zones for the null-SIC M buyers, they're basically now running at full speed. They have their supplies up and running, and that's probably what has stabilized the market and is having its impact here for titanium pyrite especially, and then probably for Mexalon as well. Yeah, that is continuing to pull back a little bit from its highs up to almost 140. ISK it's currently selling for 126. Buyers coming in at 114. You can see a bit of margin here, but they're clearly struggling to get enough volumes up and running. Less than 10 million for most sell orders, 15 million being the biggest sell order here. Volume wise, this is still a great price, well above the normal average, I would say, for Mexalon, which I would put at around 75 ISK or something like that. So for the high-SIC minerals, Mexalon, you're still getting a massive premium for that one. It is probably regained its status as being like one of the primary bottlenecks for null-SIC production, specifically for the high-SIC group of minerals. Then we've got Isogen that is also continuing to move sideways. We probably still have that big 1.8 billion sell order that's up and running for another 2 weeks, but look at what's above that. That's slowly drying up. So I am curious to see how the market is going to evolve. in 2 weeks. Now, if the owner of these couple billion units of Isogen, and there's that pigeon again, doesn't have the patience and like puts up another order right away, then we could be here for a while yet. On the other hand, if I would say he's smart enough, but you know, that really depends, of course, on your own perspective. But with a bit of patience, he may be able to set this up at a much higher price. If, you know, this sell order wouldn't be here for a couple of weeks, look at how everything above that is drying up. We could definitely see us go up into a higher price, and he may have a chance then to slightly at a slower rate, I think, try to unload his billions of units of Isogen for more ISK here. Volume wise, yeah, you get a couple of 50 million rounds as well, which I think is more dumping, but once you get through that, right, it's definitely smaller in volumes, and you should see potentially, I think, higher prices for Isogen. So we got 2 more weeks to go, and then of course we do depend on the choices that the owner makes there. After that, we have the Noxium chart that is showing another breakout. In fact, I saw a post on the subreddit over the last week that mentioned that Sidrine is also breaking out again. So these bottlenecks and this production difficulty, I think, is starting to be felt. 1,740 ISK for Noxium, buyers coming in at 1,508. That is extremely high, very, very expensive. And it does mean that if you want to go mine for Noxium in Losec and you manage to, you know, get a supply chain going or just get a couple of trips going, you are going to make a lot of ISK. I'm not sure if this is like an all-time high for Noxium, but this definitely feels like a very, very big premium, a very high price, so that is definitely something that you could produce and sell right away. I don't think you're gonna regret that. Then we've got Sidrine that did indeed jump up to another higher level above 1700 as well. In fact, almost 1800 ISK for Sidrine, 1700 for the buyers. Very expensive as well. Look at the volumes coming in here, less than 2 million on most sell orders, less than 1 million for quite a lot of these. Last 24 hours, just a couple of sell orders. Yeah, the pressure is on here as well. For suppliers to find those supplies. That seems to be pretty damn obvious. So Sidrine and Noxium, very, very expensive at the moment. Probably the 2 big drivers for the mineral price index to become really ridiculous. It's breaking out quite heavily. So production is definitely very expensive at the moment. But let's not keep in mind, titanium is stabilized, pyrite is still pretty stable, Mexilon is falling back a little bit. So overall, we could still be in a decent spot, especially because Megasite is also still not breaking out, just hovering right above that 600 range. 630 for the sellers, 578 for the buyers. Here it does look like we've got plenty of supplies going. It's Noxium and it's Sidrine that seem to be the real active bottlenecks, and for high-sec miners, those that want to stay under the Concord umbrella, obviously Mexilon is still your focus. Despite having lost a little bit of ground, it is still selling at a crazy high price. Next up, we'll do PI, but first, quick drink of water. And I'm actually gonna get rid of the mod mic here so that it doesn't, the cables don't make so much noise, but we should be good to go for PI now, and that's coming in at 1840. Like that. And as always, we'll start with the broadcast nodes that have been able to maintain their gains above 1.5 million. Still nowhere near the regular average of around 2 million ISK, but at least we are making a little bit of a comeback. 1.6 million almost for the sellers and just below 1.5 million for the buyers. And the explanation on this is, of course, the actual introduction of a new item. Can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but it's another sort of nullsec beacon or Sino stuff, and it requires some of these advanced PI materials. As a result, increased demand has been able to drive the price up, and that's these increased volumes that we are seeing here. Now this could just be the beginning, because of course CCP has announced that potentially they're working on more smaller deployable structures to give the players more agency. And yeah, perhaps again, we're mid-May, March, we're practically at springtime, and then April, May, those tend to be pretty active a couple of months when it comes to EVE Online announcements, the anniversary plans, hopefully trailers, stuff like that. We'll see in these special times, of course, how it all works out. But I do think we've got some interesting stuff to look forward to. At the end of last year, start of this year, they've been a little bit slower when it comes to news. So perhaps they have some plans ready for us at this point. We'll see what comes next. For our refined SPI materials, not such good news. Here is the construction block charts just staying below 7K. That is really not good. 7,100 for the sellers, 6,100 for the buyers, and these average prices show that people are dumping to 6,100 ISK for these buyers. There's just probably too much production as well, and no patience considering this chart. People are just saying, whatever I get out of it, I'll take it, and that is it. That's not what I'm doing, honestly. I'm making coolants, I'm making mechanical parts, and I'm making, I think it's regular superconductors, and I'm hoarding them. I'm building up really big stock now. I'm not planning to make the same mistake as that Isogen seller, bringing everything to the market in one go and just keeping it from ever really increasing for a very long time. But, eventually I'll move these stocks to the trade hubs, and then I'm hoping to get a better price for them than what we're seeing now, because this chart is not very attractive. Consumer electronics, same thing, hovering above 6,250. It's almost 7,000 for the first seller, 6,500 for the buyers. Extremely cheap. Then we've got the coolants, that's bouncing off of 5,000 ISK. I mean, that's just so low. Probably a little bit of buying, a little bit of position taking once we reach that 5K. 6,300 for the sellers, 5,800 for the buyers. Still extremely cheap. Then we've got our cryoprotectant solutions that are flat at 100,000 ISK, 102 for the sellers, 92 for the buyers. We can repeat this at infinitum here, but they are here because they are tied to implants, so they are a little bit different. This is a specialized, so you could compare that to the robotics, for instance, that has crashed down to like 60K. So obviously cryoprotectant solutions are still at an, I would say, normal average price for a specialized PI material. And as a result here, this is one that you gotta see as potentially an investment at the right time for another introduction of an implant set. And so now, trying to buy substantially below 100K should be possible with these buy prices. It'll be slow, it'll be difficult considering the average chart here, but whatever you can pick up could become worthwhile when or if CCP comes out with another implant set. Enriched uranium tied to fuels, so another big decliner. That's basically pulling up just a little bit at the end. Again, a volume spike here. There could be some maybe speculation, some preparation on what's coming next. I think it is a supply chain, of course, right? PI does go from refined, and then you use refined to go into specialized, and then you go into advanced, etc. So eventually those increased prices and demand for advanced PI materials should ripple through the rest of that economy as well. And we're starting to see a couple of first volume spikes, but everything is very muted. I mean, enriched uranium selling for less than 7,000 ISK. This is not that easy to make, so this is a very cheap price. 6,500 for the buyers. It's definitely not great. Integrity response drones, so these seem to be holding on their gain, staying a bit below average, but at least it's at 1.7 million for the sellers and 1.6 for the buyers. And then we get mechanical parts, back down 6,000 ISK. This one is a little bit easier to make, but still, 10,000. Normally you should be around that price range. So 6,400 for the sellers, 6,200 for the buyers. Very cheap again. Nanites tied to implants, back above 5K. All right. So here 5,300 for the sellers, 5,100 for the buyers as well. Perhaps not entirely unexpected. We had this little bit of a dip, it is being bought basically steadily by people that want to also grab it below 5,000 disk, which for my money is where you want to have your nanites set if you want to be ready for new implants. Then we get the nano factories. Should start with the chart here. One of the exceptions, I'm gonna assume here that you may perhaps not need nano factories in the production of those new items, but who knows what CCP comes out, of course, with next. And so this could still be basically your opportunity to jump in on some really cheap advanced PI materials. 740,000 for the sellers, 680 for the buyers. And you can see about a year ago, we come from like 1.7 million ISK, so this is definitely less than half the starting price. Very cheap. Potentially you could look into that. Then we get organic mortar applicators, also came back a little bit from 600 to probably 750-ish, and it's in fact almost 800,000 for the sellers, 730 for the buyers. So these again still below average, but recovering a little bit on that new item. Recursive computing modules still not doing that well, but 1.15 million for the sellers, 1 million and a little bit for those buyers. Robotics, took a quick sneak peek at that one before. So this one tied to fuels, not doing great. In fact, the normal price I would say is at least 100,000 disk or around 100,000 disk. You can see we had already a decline to 85% of that range, and now we're down to 60k, so 60% of the normal range. That's not so great. 63,000 for the sellers, less than 60,000 for the buyers. Then we've got self-harmonizing power cores, which about 10 days ago finally had its volume spike as well. I do think there are some speculative players out there as well that are gambling on advanced PI material. They want to be ready for potentially some structure introductions, and as a result we've got this behavior. But what we do see is that the market is saying, yeah, maybe they're right. So they're not crashing everything down with massive dumping right away. They're saying like, let's take it slow, let's try to keep this 1.5 to 1.6 million price range. Let's not recrash the market right away, which for instance what we saw before was here, right? A little bit of a volume spike, someone trying to push us back to 1.5 million. I mean, it was a 1 year low point, and then the market said no, we're going even lower, and again. And so here we've really played with that 1 million as the low point on a couple of occasions, and we constantly crashed ourselves back down on these tiny volumes. So this was really a terrible time. And anyone that broke basically said, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna sell. Kept crashing the market, kept making any headways, super shallow basically. And so all of these investors that have gotten these volume spikes here, were holding probably losses for quite a bit of it. But now here we moved up, we're back to, so those guys that bought here definitely have some gains, especially here I would say at this point. And yeah, who knows what the future will bring, of course, but for now the market is saying let's keep the price at this current range of 1.7 million for the sellers, 1.5 million for the buyers. And you can definitely see that reverse, I would say, on this decline and in this period. It was so obvious, right? Way more supply than demand. The demand was the bit of the information here that you really couldn't browse in, and now this is the supply and here is the demand. So that's the real difference, of course, I would say, is that suppliers are wisening up to this. Maybe they've also diversified a little bit, but they're saying, I'm not just going to recrash the market. We're going to have a little bit of patience here. Sterile conduits, another late bloomer, back up to 1 million ISK. So this to me does make, where was it, nano factories look kind of juicy, kind of interesting to take that gamble on, because now sterile conduits also one that was really lagging behind. But here's the volume spike, here is the move to 1 million, and about 1 million for the sellers, 950,000 for the buyers. And again, if all the others are like a little bit of have at least some predictive value, then you should not expect a crash back down to less than 800,000 disk right away on this one. Then we've got Yukomi superconductors, still flat. Let's see what the price is. 66,000 for the sellers, 60k for the buyers. I mean, on this chart it looks okay to make a jump, and this is the behavior when CCP introduces implants. You can see the volatility of this. That also means it's high potential. as always, if you want to buy stuff, don't overdo it. Make sure that you can afford to have that ISK parked for a while, and that you don't put all your eggs in a single basket. And with where mainframes continuing that recovery trend, also doing a little bit of a move back above 1.5 million, 1.6 for the sellers, 1.5 for the buyers. So very interesting to see that difference between advanced PI and all of the lower tier stuff. But the first couple of ripples are starting to show through, and what I like is the fact that we're maintaining those recoveries so far. We're not crashing everything back down right away. So I think the market is holding on for some CCP announcements here. Advanced movements next at 30 minutes. Like that, and let's try to go over these. They've had a little bit of volatility, I would say, in all likeliness, because of the changes to the Marauders. They became in vogue all of a sudden. Prices shot up to like 2 billion ISK almost for a couple of these Marauders, especially the popular PvE ones. And as a result, all of a sudden, I think a rush on production started and people had to buy materials. So here we have, for instance, crystalline carbonite that jumped up to 162, definitely the high end of its range, and it's basically still there. 170 for the sellers, 150 for the buyers. We're lacking a little bit of supply at the moment, so that is definitely quite interesting, making that I think it's probably the biggest Tech 2 production that you can do, except maybe like Tech 2 freighters and things like that, but it's definitely significant, and making those a little bit stronger, a little bit more versatile, a little bit less risky, does seem to have moved the general production needs up quite a little bit. Then we've got for Caldari, not metamaterials, but we need the carbides, and here you see the spike here went up to above 250, super pronounced 1-year high point. But look at that, we're actually crawling our way back above 200 ISK here. 196, 197 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers. Again, very, very expensive, definitely above average, in fact above pretty much the entire chart here. And Caldari was actually already volatile potential for trading and things like that. So this is kind of crazy. If you manage to invest below 150 on these low points, you are looking at a very, very nice trade on this one. But yeah, Caldari, Golem, I'm going to say that's probably the reason why we are paying this pretty big premium for titanium carbide. And then we get our Minmatar Fernite carbide here, also a spike up to 200, recovered from that, but we're still above average, I'm going to say. 160 for most sellers, and this is a 9 jumps out, I should probably go like this. 160 for the sellers, 151 for the buyers. Not by that much anymore, but we're definitely trading above average here again. And then we get our tungsten carbide for Amar that also came online a little bit later, I would say. But the Paladin, the Paladin is a great ship, missile ship, no need for ammo. It's definitely another one of those that has its place in PvE. In fact, for some players, I think it's considered the strongest one. And as a result, we're above 200 here, 200 for the sellers and 187 for the buyers. Definitely a pretty nice premium yet again. So the carbides have definitely increased in price. I would say it's going to be demand, because we need more production in Tech 2 at the moment. Let's see if it finally has an impact on the metamaterials. But yeah, I'm a little bit thirsty. I hope it's not Icelandic ash or anything like that in the air. I think we're still too far away from that. But let's get started on the metamaterials. One photonic for Galente, and no, these are still not moving. Galente definitely still pretty stable, below average. Less than 12,000 ISK for the first seller, 11.4 for the buyers. That's kind of interesting, a little bit unexpected. I thought perhaps we'd see a swing here, a little bit, at least a little bit of demand, a little bit of a pull up. We do see a volume spike here, but the price just not moving. Non-linear metamaterials for Caldari here, that's a little bit more in line with what I expected, although this is more volatile than I expected all of a sudden here as well. Above 30k, 1-year high point. 32,000 for the sellers, 29,000 for the buyers, but it's alive. I think the good news is I've historically, always been a little bit hesitant for advanced move materials because it is quite a complex subject and it's dependent on nullsec and on a lot of factors. But I did always recognize its very wavy behavior that did make it interesting to trade if you could try and time the market a little bit. Right, buy below 20k, sell at 25k. That's once, twice, 3, 4, and now 5 sell opportunities that have showed up here. But it's what I find a little bit unfortunate, of course, is that it took a CCP intervention, really buffing one of the Tech 2 ships for this one to really start to show its potential. I mean, this is a trade: buy for 20k a month ago, sell for 31,000 now. That's where you're making some ISK. So that's a nice move up right here. So yeah, man. Too bad that I'm so risk averse personally, because we could have definitely bought a very nice trade here for nonlinear metamaterials. And again, do you expect this to then start to show up here as well? We know that this one is just flat and well below average. Let's take a look at Minmatar next. Plasmonic metamaterials also flat but around average, 20k for the sellers and 19,000 for the buyers. So this is not a nice jumping point, but it also shows that stability in this market. And then for terahertz metamaterials, also flat, a little bit below average still, 17,000 for the sellers, 16,000 for the buyers. All right, the first one to move again, Caldari, the kings of volatility in the Tech 2 market at the moment. Then we get our other advanced move materials. Quite a few of these had a little bit of a recovery. I would say most of them last week at least were losing back some of those gains. For fermionic condensates, we're still at 73 for the sellers, 69.5 for the buyers. That does look like we'll be able to hold on to a 70k for now. Then we've got ferrogel, this one, losing back. Are we back at 30k? 33,000 for the sellers, 33,000 for the buyers. All right, margin is definitely closing here again as well. So I don't think we'll play with the 1-year low points, but the pressure is there. Fullerenes staying above 750. 813 for the seller, 776 for the buyers. It's not 1,000 ISK yet, but again, a little bit of recovery with pressure at the. I'm still seeing a lot of pressure here though. Hypersynaptic fibers going back down towards 9,000 ISK. Buyers at 9.1. Nano transistors stable at 5k. All right, slight comeback. Let's see. Yeah, that's the bad news, of course. Look at that supply. Then all of a sudden, starting here. Less than 5, and the pressure is right there. Phenolic composites, that one actually made it back to its average price, practically almost 2,000 ISK, and now the pressure is mounting. 1750 for the sellers, less than 1700 for the buyers. And then we've got ceramic fibers, yeah, that one that all of a sudden came alive. This one also did not recover that quickly, and I went up to 550. Let's see where that's at. 500 is still for the sellers, 445 for the buyers. If you were smart enough to buy like let's say close to 300 or something like that, these were 1-year low points that we've tested 3 times here. You are looking at a nice sell opportunity. So definitely a bit of a comeback in volatility almost across the board in advanced moon materials. But be careful, I'm seeing signs of pressure that are definitely there as well. Next up, let's take a look at the impact on Tech 2 ships at 38 minutes. Like that. All right, let's take a look here at the Basilisk that went below 200 million and is now moving its way back up, selling for 230, and that's almost trade worthy here. 188 still for those buyers. They are not budging. So a couple of supply waves that are happening, and very patient buyers that are saying, I'm just moving below 190, that's our floor, and there's no way that I'm peeking my head up above that. I don't want to spook this market or make it worse. I want cheap Basilisk. That's basically what's happening here. Volumes are down a little bit as well, so less supply pushing the price back up. But I don't see that, as long as the buyers don't follow in, you don't get that really nice volatility where you can sometimes make like 25, 30, maybe even 50% on some of these moves up, like right here, right? Buy for 180, sell for 230. That's a pretty nice trade. Here you have to have buyers that feel forced to move up as well. That's not what's happening here for now in the Basilisk market. Cerberus, yeah, seems to be the same. We definitely have an upswing, but nowhere near a peak towards 280. We're talking 250 for the buyers, 216 for the 250 for the sellers, and 216 for the buyers. They're forced up a little bit, but really not that much. It's basically still these low data points right here. Then we get the Guardian, flat at 200 million, so slight recovery in the MAR, but all volatility still seems to be gone from this market. And again, those buyers, 183, they're just not budging. They're saying, I want my cheap Guardians. That party doesn't seem to be ending very easily. Then we've got the Hound, also, slight recovery, but a little bit too stable to be trading in. Love to see that first part of the chart. That's a lot better, right? Buy below 25 million, sell above 35 million. Those are the trades we're looking for, but it looks like these are not the prices that we are looking for at the moment. 27 for the sellers, 24 for the buyers. That's way too narrow a margin. That's basically right in the middle of this chart. I don't want to touch that, to be honest. The Ichthyrsa is stabilizing at its current range. 760 for the sellers, less than 700 million for the buyers. Perhaps a bit more supply coming online. It's definitely not pushing the price down that much. Then the Ishtar, flat above 200 million. I think we have to accept that as perhaps its new normal price. Right, about half a year ago it was above 230. Once we get below 230, that looked like a nice investment opportunity, which they did. Unfortunately, the volatility up to 280 never materialized on this one. But now, yeah, it does look like we have moved to a lower average for this ship. 208 for the sellers, 199 for the buyers. Narrow margin on that 200 range. The Manticore, that's a little bit better. 1 year low point at 20 million, shot up to almost 40 million. That's a trade. But now I do think that buyers will hesitate to go back above 25. Yeah, 20. Well, actually here 26, 29 for the buyers. Unfortunately, that's not the place you want to jump in on the market. But it is showing that here for the Manticore, Caldari, a bit more volatility. The buyers do feel forced to evolve with the price a little bit. So here you do have potentially better opportunities. If we would go back below 25 million by a decent chunk, I would say that could be interesting. Then the Munin moved to 1 year low point, bit of interest in there. That's quite normal, but very muted, right? Less than 200 still for the sellers, 185 for the buyers. This is really not volatile enough to do a lot of trading. Then we've got the Nemesis, same thing. That range is so unfortunate, right? 22.5 to 25 million, a bit above that. And where are we landing? Well, 24 for the sellers, 20.5 for the buyers. Yeah, we'd either need to get rid of some more of these and buy well below 20 million, or we need these sell prices to like shoot up to 30 million or something like that. So unfortunately, it does look like volatility has gone down a little bit. And then there's our exceptions. Here is the Oneros. That is nice. Low points 150, 160. High points 200, 230 million. That is super nice. We're currently going back down from our third spike. 188 for the sellers, 168 for those buyers. So I'd say there's potentially still room to go down on more supplies to a better buy order. And then the gamble is, does this continue or does this end? I mean, this is nice though. Last 3 months after being basically a dead ship market for maybe even more than a year here, always that slow steady stuff. That's not what you want to trade on. And then here that low point or that low plateau, just above 150 for quite a while. You could have grabbed at least one. I always say I would never buy more than one Oneros, but I'm pretty confident that you could have bought an Oneros for less than 150 and then 1, 2, 3 sell opportunities. That is pretty damn nice. And at the moment, yeah, we're going back down. So maybe even a dozen new Oneros ships here could really crash us down. And how much more do we need for less than 160? It's not that many. Again, here it's maybe 10, 15 impatient sellers dumping to these buyers here, and you're looking at 153. And that's of course where you could potentially again grab one and hope for the volatility to maintain. Then we've got the Panther, battleships continuing to go up in price. I think this is the impact of the increased demand due to the Marauders. 1.1 billion above that now for the sellers, and above $1 billion for the buyers. Then we've got our purifier that was finally starting to show a little bit of volatility as well. We went substantially below 25 a week ago, a bit above maybe 10 days, and we're now, unfortunately one coming in at 28, but we were at 30 million for the sellers, 24 million for those buyers. So that's still the pattern though. The buyers are saying no, just because supply is drying up a little bit here, we are not going to start to be super aggressive for the purifier. We know they're coming, at least they're confident that they're coming, and so they're just willing to keep those buy prices very, very low. And so that does keep that potential for like a moonshot to 35 to 40 million. That's not in the cards as long as those buyers feel confident to just stay where they are. And we've got the Scimitar back down below 200 million ISK here, 190 for the sellers, 181 for the buyers. Let's see what the low point was. Honestly, I'd wait for a buy price below 180 on this one to buy a single one. And then we get to Widow, another battleship, confirming that, in my opinion, increased customers slowly heading towards the 1.2 billion on the chart. Drying up. Let's see if there's anything for sale around here. Nope, 1.5 billion now for the sellers and almost 1.1 for those buyers. It would be interesting to see if those battleship buyers start to feel that pressure to go up in price. Eventually that should translate in the other ships as well, in my opinion. Here is the Zealot, so someone made an investment at the low point below 180, 200 now for the sellers, 171 for those buyers. It's that same thing, right? Whoever bought here below 180, as long as you didn't do too many of them, you can probably sell that at a profit already, but those buyers, they're staying right where they are, 171. So you probably already are looking at 30 million now, but it's very difficult to get more volatility going as long as these guys just are not budging at all. So yeah, man, those buyers, the patience of buyers is causing stability in the Tech 2 ship market. That's my read on what I'm seeing here. Then we've got the Tech 3 markets coming in at 46.10. And let's take a look at that. I think we had potentially one move that was starting to build. So I'm not even sure. I think it was the Jackdaw. But let's take a look here. Here's the Confessor, stable at that 45 to 50 million range. 48 for the sellers, 43 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, 2 sell orders, 5 ships. These volumes pretty good, pretty stable. I don't expect any big moves here. It's not a lot of supply, but I guess it's just enough in this circumstance here to just keep us where we're at. Then next we've got the Hecate. Let's take a look at that again. Very flat, just below 50 million, 48 for the sellers, 40 million for the buyers. Not a lot of buyers showing up here, and 63 of them here is a lot, but everything else is basically, right where you would expect it for this current price for a stable period still. Then we had the Jackdaw, and that one is also right just below 50 million, is pretty normal range. Supply wise, we got a little bit more, but again, 220s, that's nothing to panic about. 46.5 for the sellers, so that's 47, 48. I mean, this really becomes pretty much the same story here, and at 43 million for the buyers. Not that much supply, maybe a little bit too much. That's already translated in a slightly lower price. You could expect this to slow down and then maybe a couple of extra confessors to come in, but that 47-ish is definitely the range for all of these destroyers, and we're not seeing either such massive purchases that we shoot up in price all of a sudden, or such massive supply increases that we're crashing down the price. We're basically in a market that's happy where it's at. And then we've got these Vepel, 47, still that same range, 44 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, 1 sell order, 10, a little bit less, but also the least popular one. So yeah, this unfortunately means that while it is predictable, it's also very stable at the moment, because there's no real disruptions in the tactical destroyer market to report. And it's for like pretty much the last almost 2 months at this point. We are where I would expect us to be, and we sometimes see, I mean, this is not a lot, so a little bit of less supply here, make some extra Hecates, make some Jackdaws or something like that, and you could start to push the price of the Confessor back up a little bit. But honestly, a dozen Confessors could then put that right back in order. So I don't see this move. I don't see any reason to expect movement here outside of something unexpected. All of a sudden, like an Elsic Alliance saying, we need a Confessor fleet, we need a Jackdaw fleet. Something like that could disrupt the market, of course. But then, unless you're in the know here, I would say I don't expect us to go anywhere. Then we get our cruisers. Here's the Legion continuing its slightly volatile period to 1-year high points. 218 for the sellers, 181 for the buyers. This could be some alliance purchasing. We definitely have a couple of days with 100 of them. So I would say slightly higher volumes, higher prices. And I think the Legion has its place in Elsic doctrines. Let me know if I'm right or wrong on that. Otherwise, manipulation, 100 legions, it's not that much ISK. It's definitely doable. But I do think we've got the increased volumes because of some fleet action in Nullsec, or perhaps wormhole space, who knows. Then we've got the Loki. That one is still pretty stable at the 178 million, 162. Availability is a little bit less of that, I would say, so that is probably why they're moving in on the legions. Or maybe it's a doctrine thing. Loki's, well, actually 100 a day, so should be okay. Perhaps that's next, right? If the Legion becomes a bit too expensive, you want to take 3 fleet, you're probably looking at Loki's. So that could be primed for an upswing, but I'm not sure. You know, with the cruiser market, I don't know. I think that, there may just be stocks out there that are big enough to crash that market right away, to fill that demand right away. And there's definitely wallets out there that could just do the manipulation. So it's difficult to say. Proteus is flat around average, maybe slightly above average at 164, 149 for the buyers. Supply wise, nothing crazy to report here. And then we get the Tengu that did come from a high point and is now currently recovering down to 180 on not that much supply, although last 24 hours did see quite a bit of competition in here. For the sellers, the volumes aren't that much, so that's the same story. Sure, there is a little bit of action here and there, but it's too easy to plug that with just a bit of production or just a bit of ISK to really move this market. I couldn't predict anything that's happening here, but if you're in the know, if you happen to know in Nullsec, all right, we're gonna need this fleet, we're gonna need that fleet, you could play in this strategic cruiser market, but otherwise I would always go for a low point, buy a single one, and then wait it out, sell at a profit. That's basically what I've been doing, so that it's always one of them. You could end up using it, right? For instance, I've trained into the Legion. I think I'm almost done. Now I'm doing the fleet formation stuff, but that's my philosophy on these strategic cruisers. Single one at a time. If it doesn't work out, I can always still fly it myself. The destroyers here, I'm definitely willing from time to time at the right time to buy half a dozen of them, try to make those trades happen. But the cruisers, I don't feel that confident. And then our extra product for the week, I already showed it to you guys at the beginning. It's going to be some gas products, the Fullerenes. So we're talking Fullerenes right there. That's coming in at 52.15. Like that. Let's take a look at this, because this is also something, in my opinion, that draws some interest. It's your alternative to mining with a little bit of extra risk. Go into wormhole space, grab some gas, get back out. Can be very satisfying, can also be done in a decently small ship. So it's got options, and here is the Fullerite C28. Comes from a low point at 5,000 ISK, but is currently selling for 7.7. All right, and then a buyer's coming in at 5,400. Bit of extra demand pushing us back. 7.7 is, well, definitely around the average price where we start off a year ago at. So this seems like, all right, Fullerite C28, perhaps a slight recovery in the works here. Definitely a good sell price. Buy price still not that great, but sellers are doing okay. Fullerite C32. I mean, this is by accident, guys. I don't usually time this, but definitely an increase towards a 1-year high point. All of a sudden selling for 27,000 ISK, buyers coming at 21,000. That's definitely an increase. Well, I mean, that's almost a 100% increase here over the last 10 days or so. Fullerite C32, if you've got it or if you can produce it, definitely a great time to sell. C320 also recovered in the last month or so back to 50k. In fact, 55,000 for the sellers, 48 for the buyers. Definitely another reasonable price for this gas product, for this Fullerene. Then the C50, all right, 4 to 5K. It's currently selling for 5 to 40. All right, buyers a bit more aggressive on this one. Bit of a gap between these two, but that's reasonable again as well, I would say. Then our 540 just recovering in the last couple of months again, back above 50. 57 for the sellers, 50,000 for the buyers. Definitely a doable average price. C60 next. That one is still struggling, right? Still below 2,000 discs. Buyers, sellers 2,700. I mean, they're trying again. Buyers 1,700. So opening up a gap here, but supplies are not that plentiful. C70 going back up as well, right here at the tail end. We're talking 4,000 ISK all of a sudden. That's right here on the chart as well for the sellers, buying at 2.1, still lagging behind again. And C72, 7.5, 8. All right, is this being sold in? Oh, Tranquility Trading Tower is driving this price back down. I'm gonna take a quick look across these. That's not that much of an impact. Neither is this, neither is this. I happen to, man, this is complete happenstance, guys. But I happen to check at exactly the right product, where the perimeter Tranquility Trading Tower is pushing us down from 8.8 to 7.8. So this is around average. It's definitely still okay to be selling this stuff. It's just we get some more aggressive buyers. That means actually low prices. And then C84, final one. All right, the one that just coming down from a high point. You could say 4K for the sellers, almost 4K for those buyers, but that's still on the full 1 year chart, not that bad a price. So this is a little bit of a surprise. My experience has usually been, man, it's very difficult to get good prices for your gas products, but pretty much across the board, we're looking at recent recovery, and those sell prices right here seem to be very, very reasonable. So you could definitely go out there for a little bit of gas mining, and the Fullerenes, I would say, are a decent return on investment for your time. That's going to be it for this Eve Talk, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. We pushed the channel to 25,000 subs. I'm super proud of that. Very, very cool. Thank you very much for all of that. And as always, I'll see you next time.